Adjustments meeting and the Washington County Planning Board. We'll first have the minutes and roll call for the zoning ZBA.
We're trying to get like the TV to work, so we want to just get in and show something.
Hey, 5 o'clock's here. All right, so as soon as you're ready, go ahead and do the roll call for the zoning board of adjustments meeting. Are we ready? Still messing with them, okay.
Echo. They have echo, like they need to be muted or
Testing. Echo?
something. Need to be muted.
I can echo.
The mic.
All right, we'll try this again. How about, are we ready to start? Okay, this is the Zoning Board of Adjustments meeting. Roll call on that.
Thank you. Joel Kelsey. Philip Humbard.
Here.
Neil Helm. Here. Jay Piercy.
Here.
Lisa Miller.
Here.
Lauren Shackelford.
Here.
Kiara Lors.
Here.
Thank you.
All right. Is this agenda correct and ready to go with?
The ZBA agenda is correct as presented.
All right, we'll start with variance hearings for this portion of it. First one is the Melinda Barron variance in the Tawnytown planning area. Blake?
Thank you, Philip. The Melinda Barron variance for acreage lot size is a request to create 3 lots under 1 acre in size. It's on Harmon Road in the Tawnytown farming area, planning area. There's no technical concerns and no comments from neighbors. The applicant representative is here if you have any questions.
Did you say under 1 acre or over 1 acre?
Under 1 acre, 0.76, 0.57, and 0.86 acre. It's essentially a family lot split, doling up property among family members.
Anyone have any questions of Blake before we go on to any further?
Are there any lots of similar size nearby?
I'm unaware.
The variance is requested, we requested the variance like by the applicant to be able to get like our approval for the zoning so they can move it to the city planning to get like the approval from them. So their like approval like in the city is contingent on like the approval of the variance.
Okay. Seeing no more questions of Blake, I'll turn it over to the members of the audience. Anyone there would like to speak to this matter? State your name and address, sir.
Thank you. Excuse me. Nathan Crouch, representing this project for Balloon Associates, 3825 North Shiloh. And I just wanted to add to the presentation that the only tech comments we got back on this one were that one of the mobile homes is way up in the right-of-way. And County Road Department Superintendent provided planning comments or tech comments to move the mobile home in order to get support. And so, you know, we went back and forth, and the mobile home's been there for over 20 years, and nobody wants to move that thing. They're afraid that if they do, they won't be able to get it back up on blocks or whatever. But the point of all that is through conversation with Mr. Crowder and the road department, we've decided a good strategy to realign the right-of-way. And but there won't be any improvements on the road at this time. If at such a time they want to do some improvements to that road, as in chip and seal it or overlay it with asphalt, at that time, then the actual road alignment on the ground will be moved. But right now, all we're doing is dedicating a little additional right-of-way over on the east side of the road. And that's it. I just wanted to talk about the right-of-way realignment.
If for some reason this is removed and a new one put in there, is there any stipulation that it be put outside the right-of-way?
Well, if a new one was put in there, absolutely. It'd need to be put in accordance with right-of-way and everything, but no plans on that right now.
Okay.
The planning staff, we do have the new plans that like was approved by the road department. We didn't want to add them so we don't confuse everyone, but
Okay.
it's a slide, we can always add it if it's needed.
I've got a hard copy right here, just in case anyone wants to see it.
Does anyone have a question of Mr. Crouch? All right. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board.
Mr. Chair, I did have a question to staff. So there's I assume the adjoining item B, the variance for the setbacks, is that related to the right-of-way he was just mentioning?
That's correct.
And staff's in support of those as well?
Staff has no opinion.
Thank you. Thank you.
Will there be an encroachment whenever this is finalized?
In particular, how?
By the mobile extending over the right-of-way?
I believe that the road department's been satisfied. It is within building setback lines, but it's been there so long, it's sort of grandfathered in.
Okay.
Nathan, didn't you say they rewrote the easement, or?
We're realigning the right-of-way just in the form of dedicating additional right-of-way. The existing right-of-way isn't going to be withdrawn or decreased. We're just adding a little extra in order to, instead of having a corner that kind of goes like this, we're having it that kind of goes a little bit longer. And then, so we're requesting variances for lot size and setbacks. And the road department condition about realigning the right-of-way kind of applies to the project in general, not necessarily either one or the other, but both.
Has that right-of-way agreement already been executed, and where is it?
It's an email at this point, and we
So-
haven't had anyone sign off on anything yet, but it's definitely been discussed and agreed upon.
Yeah, we had the tech review and like we're all like, we're like in the room and like we all agreed to it.
All right, what's the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion for approval of variance request as stated.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, all opposed?
Do you want a separate motion for the setback as well?
No.
Okay, thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the setback, so I guess we've already approved that also. Okay. We'll go to the Fayetteville planning area, Donna soil variance. Blake?
Thank you. This is a family tract split for houses already on site. The variance request is for 2 lots under 1 acre in size, 0.88 acre and nearly 1 acre in size. It's in the Fayetteville planning area, and there were no comments from neighbors. The applicant representative is here if you have any questions.
Okay, anyone have any comments or questions for Mr. Chapman? All right, seeing none, I'll go to the audience. Anyone in the audience like to speak to this matter?
Thank you. Nathan Crouch, Balloon Associates, representing this project. Just wanted to piggyback and add to that presentation. And through conversation with Fayetteville Water, we ran into a roadblock. And as we do, we find solutions. And the roadblock was, how are we going to get water back to that back lot? Project property, only a service line does. And Fayetteville Water has requirements saying that a water service line can't cross property lines. And but sometimes whenever the homes and the meters and everything are already existing in place, what they'll allow you to do is establish a private water service line easement. And that's what we've done on this project, been discussed and approved by Corey Granderson, Fayetteville Water. Thank you.
That's the easement and water line we see kind of in the middle of that first lot there. It's,
Would you like me to?
I
bring
think
it
I see it. I
pinpoint?
just was going
Well,
to verify that's
what
what
you
we're
have
talking
is
about.
you've got the lower easement that comes across, that's access, and the upper easement that comes across, that's utility. Where it
Okay.
comes on to the upper lot, we're gonna hook it south right there, 10-foot private water service line easement down to track 2. And I'm not sure if it shows the easement on your copy, but we've updated our copy and I've got the easement shown here if you'd like to see it.
Okay, I don't really see the easement, so that's okay.
Would-
That's. Anyone have any questions of the? Nathan? All right. Anyone else in the audience like to speak to this matter? All right, seeing none, bring it back to the board.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the Donna Sowell variance as stated.
I'll second that.
All right, seeing a second, a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the Brent Schulte variance. Mr. Chapman?
Thank you. This is a variance to create 2 lots less than 1 acre in size, 0.8 acre and 0.572 acre, off of Gully Road in the Fayetteville planning area. Planning has received multiple complaints about the project because of lot size and visibility concerns onto Gully Road where there's a sharp corner. The road department has issues, again, with site issues, and they call for a narrower access easement at the top of Track 2, intersecting Gully. And again, the applicant is here to answer any questions.
Okay, anyone have any questions of Mr. Chapman before we go to the audience? So this proposed additional easement right-of-way is would make everybody happy with site distances and so forth?
It satisfies county road department.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Yeah, Jeff Crado, the superintendent, like he proposed this and says that this is for safety and everything, and I guess like they agreed to it.
Okay, thank you. All right, for the audience, anyone that would like to speak, would just state your name and
Sure.
address.
Elizabeth Freeman. I live at 3879 North Gully Road. I am the only other house that has access to that area. So I share two lots with him, or my lot and his lot currently. The size of the lot that he is requesting for the additional one is very, very small for the area off Gully Road. Right now, he has an easement off of my property for the visibility in that corner for our children. Like it's a one-way road. I'm not sure how that would even work out in the end, but for even cars coming around that corner, it's a very, very sharp curve. Two cars cannot go down that road currently that we live off of. So it's definitely a danger, and the lot size just for a neighborhood is just very, very small compared to everything else.
Does the current house, is the access to Gully Road for the current house going to be any different than the access for this?
No, sir, it can only fit one vehicle at a time.
Okay. Anyone have any questions? Okay, thank you. Anyone else in the audience like to speak to this matter?
Hello, my name's Doug Brooks. I live at 3860 North Gully Road, directly across from the fence where this property is. And I was really amazed when I saw that it was gonna be that small of a lot, because I've been there for 31 years. My family, raised my family there 31 years, and I've always been under the idea that in the county that we kinda had a security of no more than one home per acre. The agriculture or residential, 1 unit per acre. Apparently that's changed, and I just, went right over my head about that. But then when I saw that, even a .572, where, we're getting to where we're almost just needing a half acre. If we get to that point to where anybody can subdivide their property into half-acre tracts, I've been driving around, there's just numerous properties that have a house on them that's maybe 1.5 acres, maybe 2 acres. And they could chop that up. They get 4 acres, whatever. And that's my concern, is that the county's allowing too little space to build homes. I understand that in the city, where you have to, do high density but in the county, I thought it was different, and I have nothing against Mr. Schulte whatsoever. It was just the size of the lot when I saw that. It just seemed like, of course, your first item, there were 3 lots that were all small like that, which I just didn't realize that was,
Well, there was,
the lot splits were happening like that. Excuse me, go ahead, Phil.
well, depends on the location and the circumstances is really,
Okay, anyway, that's all I got.
all right. Anyone else?
Hello, Nathan Crouch with Balloon Associates. Couple things. If you're all looking at the plat in front of you, you'll see the driveway kind of arcing across the top of the subject property, in which the applicant is using an existing access easement in order to get to his home. And the initial plan was for the newly created, or the proposed track 2 up front next to the road, to also come out onto that driveway. But the property owner was not agreeable to adding to that access easement. And so through conversation with the County Road Department Superintendent, what we've decided to do is, instead of this front track taking access off this driveway to get to Gully Road because the road department didn't want another curb cut at that location. What we're going to do is put the driveway down at the bottom in the corner where sight distance does exist, and they can see both directions around the corner. And so we've discussed that, and the road department has agreed to that as a good alternative. Additionally, you can see some areas along the north line of the subject properties where the utilities are coming through, and in some very small corners and areas, you can see where the utilities that have actually been shot in and located by 811 and then shot in by our surveyor are coming outside those utility easements. We're definitely going to increase the size of those easements in order to get through Fayetteville's review process. But as this is a planning area split with Washington County, it'll be administrative through Washington County Planning after it makes its way through and gets approved through Fayetteville Planning. And so Washington County on planning area splits typically looks at access and zoning compliance and doesn't go any farther than that. And so driveway location, utility easements, and approval authority is what I wanted to talk about on that one. Thank you.
Okay, Nathan. Question I have is 0.572 acres.
Say it again, please.
0.572 acres. It looks like the smaller of these lots is.
Oh, yeah, they go small, and this is going to be, the back lot is already on septic, and the front lot expected to be on septic as well. Septic for subdivisions, you can go down as small as 10,000 square feet when you're platting them, and those are health department regulations. But indeed, Washington County does have zoning of 1 acre minimums, but that's why we're here tonight, is to request acreage smaller than that. And I mean, I would venture to say if you were to go either direction down Gully Road, you could definitely find lots smaller than an acre without having to drive too far. And I don't know how far or how close the smaller than 1 acre lots are, but I know that there are plenty of them down there.
Mr. Chair, 2 questions for Mr. Crouch, please.
Okay, go ahead.
Sir, is any perk test been done, any septic work been done on this proposed lot that you know of at this point?
Not at this point. It's been pretty exploratory up to this point, and he actually has some of his septic system coming over, his existing septic system serving the existing home. Some of the lateral lines are coming over into the Track 2 area, and rather than doing a septic easement serving Track 1 over onto Track 2, he's planning on abandoning that septic system and putting in an entirely new septic system for the existing home, and then one for the proposed lot if it's approved. Just kind of holding out a little bit. As far as going and doing private utility locate and ground penetrating radar and everything like that, you know, he's really racked up the bills so far, and he's just trying to hold back and see what kind of approvals he can get before he does that. But this area perks pretty well, you know, not necessarily this area particularly, but our area tends to perk pretty well. And there's plenty of location there at half acre to put a home, driveway, septic system, even underground utilities. So
My second question is, if I understand correctly, ingress and egress is going to not be on the existing lane that was discussed earlier. What's the sight distance between the proposed curb cut and that existing lane, do you know?
I haven't calculated it, but that line, 115 plus C1, we're looking at neighborhood of 220 feet from north to south on that lot. And the driveway isn't even on the north line of the lot. And so I'd say neighborhood of 200 feet distance. That's an estimate.
Thank you, sir.
Nathan, I'm a little hesitant here because there seems to be several items that are kind of, you know, are going to be changed, and this issue with the septic being
Sir,
coming.
same time, we're
At
not
the same-
here
Is there a-
reviewing and approving the survey.
Yeah.
We're, you know, doing the lot size variance.
Yeah, well, if you approve the lot, then all you gotta do is get the approvals on the others. It seemed like we're getting the cart before the horse on that matter. I would think we could table this till we get some more information on the septic and see how the plat might be. I mean,
Is-
that's my suggestion. What's the board thinking? You wanna go ahead and,
My concern too is the lateral lines, if they're already over on what's proposed gonna be the other lot. If that lot sells, then you got someone else's septic on some other new owner's property down the road. So I think we need to address some of these issues and get some answers and table this until next time, till we have more information. That's just my personal thought.
how about this end of the table?
My experience has been that we've approved these type splits based on homes that were already there within the family. And this is the first one that I've seen that had a lot that was on a proposed build, and there wasn't already a home there, that they were just trying to split for the family. This is the first time I've seen it. However, we have approved right at 5/10 of an acre lot size in the past.
On a family split.
But they had a dwelling on them, and it was a family split.
So this is for a family member?
No, sir, this is just straight track split. It'd be a
Just-
planning area split and administrative action through
So for
planning.
sale? Okay. What does everybody want to do?
If you just look at the raw rules, then this would obviously be why they're here.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Chair, I'd like to table the Brent Schulte variance request until further information can be found out about septic and additional information on the survey.
Just wanted to make sure that I got a pretty comprehensive list of the additional information you want. I've got septic system details, and I would add to
Corrected
that
plat.
perk results added to the plat, and then maybe some sort of a signed agreement about abandoning the old septic system if this is approved, or you wanting to see the existing septic system located and shown with a septic easement?
I've seen easements,
I'm sorry?
I've seen easements given from one lot to the other for existing septic, but.
Oh, of course, yes. I wasn't sure what's your
just-
preference on that.
I would have to ask county attorney, but I serve on 2 other municipal planning commissions, and I've never seen it be allowed where lead line septic field could be across a proposed lot split. Is that something county ordinances would allow?
Honestly, I'm not aware of any regulation on that.
I would say that we've done septic easements several times in the past, and I've done them in several different capacities. But the plan is not to have the septic easement, it's to abandon the existing one and then put in the new one. And since this is going through Fayetteville, all that work would have to be done before it was finally stamped off on. So,
Well, I'm just one vote, but my preference would be that independent septic be on the lot and not have
Absolutely.
a septic easement
10-4.
as proposed. And I would, obviously, the perk would be, because I know what you're referencing, the 10,000 feet, but there's also step systems and other thing else that's in play when you get to that sort of density that's not in play here. So I'd like to see some perk information
You
on the
bet.
lot as well.
If we,
I'll second the motion to table this.
all right, a motion's been made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, table to next meeting. All right, seeing that we've run out of agenda items, we're gonna adjourn the ZBA board meeting and roll over into the conditional use permit hearing of the planning board.
planning staff would request to do an amendment to the agenda, so because like most of the audience here for the quarry expansion, so if we can start hearing the D through F first, and then like we go back to the A to C.
Okay, well, can we do A first? I mean, that's not part of it, is it?
We can do the A first, it's fine.
Okay, so we're gonna have a roll call for the planning board meeting?
Yes, sir.
That's what it says.
Yeah, Joel Kelsey, he is not here. Philip Humbert,
Here?
Neil Helm, Jay Piercy,
Here.
Lisa Miller,
Here?
Lauren Shackelford,
Here.
and Kiara Loers.
Here.
All right, we're gonna have
Thank you.
approval of the minutes from the August 25th, 2022 meeting. Motion.
I motion that we approve the minutes.
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
And the agenda, we've talked to, we're gonna slightly change a few of these items, but should go pretty fast. And under new business, we'll get started. All right. Out in the county, the lodge at the Water Edge CUP.
Thank you. The lodge at Water's Edge CUP is sought for a indoor event center due east of the lake where 412 and Sonora is, to the south on Saddle Shop Lane. It consists of two existing houses that have been retrofit for events and also for a Airbnb-style operation. It'll have approximately 90 parking spots, 40 primary and 50 overflow, with 4 ADA spots. Around the perimeter will be a decomposed granite walking trail and a calculated occupancy load of 128. It's within the Nob Hill Fire District, and the nearest fire hydrant's less than 1/2 mile away. There's been some back and forth that I think is still being worked out with Washington County Road and the applicant on road improvements extending from 412 east to the project boundary entrance. The applicant is here to answer any further questions.
All right. Anyone have any questions of Mr. Chapman before we go to the audience? All right, seeing none, we'll go to the audience. Anyone in the audience like to comment on this? And who are you?
No, I just wanted to come and say, Nathan Crouch, Balloon Associates, and I'm representing this project through the CUP phase, and I can answer any questions that you may have for me. The applicant has been remodeling this home for a neighborhood of 3 years and has bought up several of the available properties and negotiated to make them available in that area. And so it basically leaves him with 2 neighbors on the little peninsula right there. And so, actually 3, pardon me. And he has gone ahead and made those phone calls and had those discussions, and we're working on compatibility with them. The client has enlisted services from architects, landscape architects, engineers, and got them all on staff, and it's coming into to be a pretty good product, a really neat product, with the lake frontage down there. Road department has said that they want us to overlay 2 inches of asphalt on that road that they typically chip seal on a 7-year cycle. Client is fine with that. But we did explore some other options about what if they came in the other end, and he said, well, you're not going to keep anybody from using Saddle Shop Lane down to the dead end and then coming up. So if you were to put a key-coded lock down there, a locking gate where they can't come in down there, maybe a sign up top, then they'd come in up there. And the applicant was like, well, yeah, we could do that. But then we'd be bringing all these cars past those neighbors living on the top of the hill, and that's not what we want to do. So he's agreeable to overlay 2 inches asphalt on the entire length of Saddle Shop Lane there. We've been in contact with the health department. We're using Piper Satterfield as our designated representative. We've got existing septic systems in the ground. They're at the main building that we're calling the lodge at the end of the peninsula right there. You know, they're designing it for Airbnb, corporate retreat, and private events with long walking trails. They're trying to have a beautiful destination, but they're also, you know, grooming the grounds in order to give them more than just one thing to do. When it's all said and done, there should be quite a nice development. But one of the roadblocks we hit was with Beaver Water District. And as you all know, the Beaver Water won't let you use the lake as your detention pond. Well, the lake isn't a detention pond, it's our drinking water, you know, and so what we're doing is going ahead and pulling back the amount of impervious surfaces and material as far as parking areas. We're still gonna pave the roads, but we won't be laying down any more pavement. It'll be stone in the parking areas, stone in the walking trails. We'll be improving or upgrading the size of the septic system. Now, Piper did tell us that if we kept it down to 90 people per day, that the septic system that exists would be adequate. But we calculated the occupancy load of the event center there based on, you know, unrestricted square feet or something that the architects get into. You'd probably help out with that. But it calculated out at 128, which is kind of an odd number, you know, rather than having a 0 at the end. That wouldn't necessarily put you in line for sprinkling the building, but they're going to go ahead and sprinkle the building also. In order to do that, we're going to have to run a heck of a 6-inch water line instead of the 2-inch that we've got. We're going to have to run that 6-inch water line, but thankfully, the water line is, or the nearest water main and hydrant is there on Saddle Shop Road, and if you can just bore under the road and then right straight onto the client's property, straight out to the lodge there.
The septic system that's already there and in use, is it the original septic that was with that house when it was originally built?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And that was built as a single-family residence?
Yes, ma'am. Very large residence, but indeed, single family.
2-story with a basketball court?
No basketball, but I've still got my
A
fingers
sport court?
crossed.
Yeah,
No, there's a big old lake.
it's a home.
That's right.
So, question to staff, if I could. So, we're looking at the conditional use permit. Will we see large-scale development after this is approved?
Yes.
Definitely, yeah.
So obviously, Mr. Crouch, I had some questions about, you know, how often the site's used, if there's gonna be live music, time of operation, that sort of thing. Obviously, I guess that's more the large-scale development conversation than conditional use permit conversation, but that is something I would have an interest in hearing.
Yes, sir.
That
And when that time comes, so Balloon Associates is contracted to go out there and survey the entire property, put it all into one plat, and we're gonna go out there and do topo as well in order to you know, get Piper what she needs for the septic systems, get our landscape architect, Arlen Van Kuren, get him what he needs for his designs, and everybody else. You know, everybody is waiting on that topo, and we've got it, should be out there probably next week. Then it'll take us a couple weeks to produce a copy of that. One thing I wanted to bring up is in the staff report. I'm looking through the conditions of approval. Page 3, near the bottom under planning conditions, is no outdoor amplified music. Well, being that the applicant owns a large portion of this property out here, I would, and also I accept the fact that in the letter of explanation for this, we didn't necessarily establish any hours of operation or days of the week, because, you know, that just kind of goes on demand, what you can book it for. But at the same time, this is a community and there are existing neighbors out there, and so what I would propose is rather than no outdoor amplified music, we could establish a cutoff time of evening for the amplified music, because as it is, you know, proposed to be outdoor retreat, you know, event center, Airbnb type of deal folks are gonna wanna have a little music. And I hear amplified music, and I can think of two different things: big old Marshall stacks and people just trying to make their neighbors annoyed. Or I can envision just just a little boom box out there while people are throwing horseshoes. That wouldn't even be allowed with no amplified music. And so I'd like to be a little more realistic and maybe even set a decibel limit that they have done on several other event centers in the area. But more specifically, just set like a cutoff time of evening. 10 o'clock is what I had in mind, but if you have something else in mind, we're certainly interested in what you have to say.
Appreciate it. Obviously, those are the conversations that I was interested in having as well, but we can wait till the LSD to do that.
Well, and having, with the conditional use having to do with compatibility is why I'm bringing it up now. And since it's in the conditions of approval, I didn't want it to carry on to the next set of conditions if it's something that would be up for conversation and maybe revision, so.
All right, anybody else have any questions or Nathan? All right, anybody else in the audience would like to speak to this matter? All right, seeing none, bring it back to the board.
Amplified music I have a problem with in that area. You're directly across from the public boat ramp. There's other residences in the area across. I have a problem with that.
I would say that the residents across the lake probably be about 1,000 yards away to.
You're also on the
over
lake.
half a mile, no doubt.
You're gonna get that sound carrying over the water.
I definitely see it, maybe a decibel limit set for it,
Do you have anything in mind, or would you like maybe a little research on that in order to
Yeah,
present
something,
at
why don't we have a
LSD?
little research on that to see what,
I might propose striking that condition from the conditions on this CUP then, if it's at your pleasure.
yeah. I mean,
Also on that.
I don't like loud music, but
Yeah.
that's me,
Well, you go to a wedding.
it's too loud. Can't talk.
Also on that particular building structure, is somebody looking at the electrical on that?
Absolutely. It's been under remodel for
A long
3
time
years with
by
an
numerous
architect,
people.
Father-daughter general contractor team, which is really neat. And, with a client who only lives in this area part-time, has family that lives here, he comes in to visit. He's planning on spending a good deal of time here and, doesn't
Okay.
want to tick off the whole neighborhood.
Watch your electrical.
Yeah,
I know the property.
yeah. You know the property.
Yes, I do.
They have gone in there and they've rewired the house. They've rebuilt a couple walls due to structural opinions from the architect, and they plan on upgrading the septic system, just to name a few.
All right, any more questions from the board?
So what's the verdict on the outdoor like music? Is it?
I'd like to
gonna
have a
be-
conversation about it during the,
So do we need to
large scale.
adjust the conditions on it for the CUP or?
I'll make a motion for approval, striking the outdoor music and letting the applicant know that we would like to address that with more specific language as part of as part of the large-scale development. And then we'll have an opportunity to look at hours of operation, days of operation, that sort of thing.
Sure.
So I'm a little different on the music, but I think that we can still address that when the time's right with the LSD. So I'll make that motion.
Second.
all right, got a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? All right. We'll skip B and C and go on to the county replat of Lot 211, Weddington Woods Minor Subdivision.
Thank you. The replat of Lot 211 of Weddington Woods seeks to create a two-tract split, 1.3 acre and 1.3 acre in size. There were no letters in opposition and no technical comments received. I'm not certain if the applicant's here.
All right, any questions of Mr. Chapman? Anyone in the audience like to comment on this item?
This is the last one.
Oh,
Thank you
yeah,
for
right.
bearing with me. This one's very simple. It's a minor sub replat in Weddington Woods, and he's got frontage on both for both lots. The lot extends from one street to the other, splitting her down the middle. But I can answer any questions if you have any of me.
All right, anyone have any questions of Mr. Nathan? All right, bring it back to the board.
Why is this not administrative?
It's not administrative because they, in order to replat a lot, it's not an administrative action with this code of ordinances. Some cities will do that as a lot split, but Washington County requires a replat of a platted lot to come before the board. However, if it's in the planning area,
Okay.
if it's in a planning area, then it would all be on the city.
But it's beyond the 1 acre.
Yes. That's why it's not on board of adjustments.
All right. Anybody, any other questions? All right,
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve the replat of Lot 211 Weddington Wood minor subdivision.
I'll second.
all right, got a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
That's it for me. Thank you, guys.
Okay, the next item is the North Road minor subdivision. Mr. Chapman.
The North Road Minor Subdivision is a request to create 4 tracts, 3.4 acre, 3.4 acre, 1 acre, and 1 acre in size. No letters in opposition and no technical concerns. The subject location is at North Road and Highway 59.
All of them look like they have plenty of access and no technical, okay. Anyone have any questions, Mr. Chapman? All right, is anyone in the audience like to speak to this matter? All right, please come forward and state your name and address, please.
My name is Deidre Holcomb. I am the property right beside it. I didn't have enough time to get anything. My name is Deidre Holcomb. The
And your-
property is right next to mine,
And what's your address?
10298 Arkansas Highway 59.
Okay, thank you.
I received notice late last week with not enough time to get anything written up for you. With these lots going in and what I've just learned, you're gonna put a lot of septic systems in. Does anybody know how long 28 feet is? That's how far it is to water in my well. I'm green. I have a green privacy fence. My husband put up honeysuckles, and they have now started spraying weed killer on my honeysuckle, so I'm losing my green privacy fence. These things don't matter to you. They matter a lot to me. I have horses. If they bring in people and they don't, I've got signs up, I'm legal. It says do not cross, Arkansas equine law, but it doesn't keep them from coming over. It won't keep them. Just a couple weeks ago, and I have the case number here, a pack of wild dogs come through the middle of my pasture and attacked one of my dogs. It was several hours before the county, and Washington County is good. I'm not complaining about the county, but it was several hours for them to get out to take this call. I know a dog attack is not a high priority, but it is to me in my world. But 28 feet to water, I got chicken houses right next to me, so I'm either gonna drink chicken, I'm gonna drink human, or God forbid, if I get on Weddington Lake, I drink fish. I mean, but I don't think we can handle that much septic. It's just not good. My horses are world champions. I just don't think this is good. It needs to stay farmland as it's always been. And I'm not opposed to change, but just with the septic alone coming in on the water, on the shallow water table is not gonna handle it.
Okay, anyone have any questions? All right. Anything else to add?
I guess it's already been decided, but I just don't think the land can handle it. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. Anyone else would like to speak to this matter? All right, bring it back to the board then. Any discussion?
So the applicant is not here, is that correct? You are the applicant, okay.
Yeah.
Let's visit with the applicant.
Press the road. Oh, okay. Addie Perez here with Bates and Associates. And so we have done a perk test, and we do have the perk test results, and we
Did
can
you-
send them.
Name and address, please.
What?
I didn't hear the name.
I'm representing this project.
Okay, go ahead and give us your name and address.
Addie Perez, Bates and Associates. Yeah, and so we do have the perk test results, and we can forward those to you guys as well. But yes.
So that was, and I apologize, I'm having a little trouble following the survey. So you're creating 2 new 1-acre lots, is that correct?
Yes, that is
And
correct.
then resurveying 6 and change into 2 3s and change, is that correct?
Yes, that is
Okay.
correct.
And there's existing 1 house on this property now?
Yes.
No? Yes? Yes, 1
Yes,
house?
that is
Okay.
correct.
So there's 1 house, 1 septic system in place now, correct?
Yes.
And then you've got perk tests on the other 5 proposed sites?
Yes.
Okay. And the intention of the applicant is to sell those for homes to be built on?
I'm not entirely sure what the intention of, but I can definitely figure that out.
Okay, thank you.
Can you clarify, so you did 1 perk test per each lot split?
Yes, that is correct. And that will be clarified whenever we forward that perk test to you as well.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, this meets the basic criteria. It's my understanding that the reason that it's here is because our county planning requires, for instance, 2 5s and a 1 or something to that effect. What is the rule that this can't be an administrative split? The number of 1-acre tracts, is there the number of smaller tracts, or why?
Number of tracks.
It's because it was previously platted as a subdivision. So because it's a subdivision, it has to go before planning board. This is a replat.
Oh, okay, I hear you now.
That's a minor subdivision, so like they have like acreage, that is 1 and they have one that is less than 5 acres, that's why.
Yeah, this is right across the road from the Summers plat that the railroad did many years ago.
Gonna get a motion, or what are we gonna do?
Obviously, I mean, the concern that I had was the perk. And, you know, that's, again, I tend to agree. I think this is in line with what we're directed to do with the county. It is required for us to approve because of the number of parcels it's creating. But if the perk test has been done and that information could be given to the county for clarification, then I'd make a motion for approval of this minor subdivision split as proposed.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Back page here, Teen Challenge of Arkansas Pre-LSD.
I'm sorry, but there's 2 houses and a shed on that place. They may not be living in both houses, but there's a single wide trailer house and a house on that first property. She said there's only 1 house on.
Yeah, it shows on our plat. All right, Blake,
Thank you. Teen Challenge of Arkansas seeks a pre-LSD to erect a 20,000 square foot covered equine facility in the southwest corner of their property. Sorry, my computer just kind of went crazy. To this point, we've received no comments from neighbors. The road department had a concern about the existing quality of Boys Home Road, in that it's a 20, I think either 20 or 30-foot gravel, and not really set up for a lot of in and out horse traffic. We received further clarification that there would be no additional traffic generated and that this is not a typical equine facility. This is strictly for horses already on site, and the only traffic would be for the maintenance and care of the animals. So that seems to have satisfied, from our perspective, the road department's concerns.
Mr. Ritchie, the engineer on the project, is here if you have any questions for him.
Okay, well, anybody have any more questions of Mr. Chapman before we go to the audience? All right, seeing none, I'll ask that anyone in the audience like to speak. I guess you're up here, sir. State your name and address, please.
My name is Randy Ritchie, the project engineer. My address is 12081 Centerpoint Church Road in Prairie Grove. And I think he did a pretty good job summarizing. It is a private facility. It's not open to the public. Part of the boys' program there is that each boy has to take on a horse, take care of it, train it, and it's part of their therapy. The horses are already there. Won't be any trailer traffic in or out. Nobody's going to events there. It's part of the boys' training. The boys already live there on site. So it's just, they're trying to add into their program.
All right, thank you. Anyone have any questions of Mr. Ritchie? All right, seeing none. Anybody else have any comments from the audience? All right, back to the board then.
I had a question to staff, just for my information. So obviously, there's no zoning in the county. Use by right is one single family or agricultural. Would this not fall under agricultural? Why is this requiring a large-scale development?
Yeah, this project came multiple times, so the reason they're doing this for now, or because they're adding to an existing LSD, so that's why I just want to make sure to include everything in one project.
Okay.
Yeah.
In hindsight and in retrospect, that's a really good point.
I was just curious, because, I mean, if this was an individual building this on their property in the county, it wouldn't require any sort of approval. So it's only here because it's on a piece of a property that had a large-scale development previously.
Correct.
Okay, all right. That being said, I'd make a motion for approval of the Teen Challenge of Arkansas pre-LSD for this structure.
Second.
All right, got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go back to items B in the Fayetteville planning area, Farmington Quarry expansion, high-intensity CUP. Mr. Chapman.
Thank you. The Farmington Quarry expansion, high CUP, seeks to add an additional 107.5 acres to the existing 188 acres of quarry space. A 150-foot boundary is proposed around the expansion parameter. To date, we've received at least 34 complaints from neighbors. The general gist of complaints are reduced property value, noise and dust, disruption of wildlife habitat, disruption of private gatherings, blasting causing structural integrity issues, traffic safety, and environmental concerns in general. The applicant provided a dust abatement plan where they're trying to tackle down the most prevalent sources of dust pollution. Fugitive emissions is what they call it. And basically, the mitigation plan, from what I'm able to understand, is that water sprays keep materials wetted as it goes through a crusher. And also the haul roads and stockpiles are also wetted down. Approximately 100,000 gallons of water are applied for each day in operation. to maintain a minimal amount of dust and debris. And also at the entrance and scale exit, there's a wheel wash system to mitigate trucks from creating excess dirt on the road. Planning has tacked on a number of conditions recommended for approval, such as maintaining ADEQ permits, complying with all large-scale development regulations, trucks going through a wheel wash system when leaving the site and being tarped, truck traffic not going north on Hamstring, but rather south towards Weddington, and adherence to the provided dust abatement plan, and also maintaining an average blast of 1 time per week. The applicant wishes to will limit crushing hours from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday and 6 until noon on Saturday, with no operations on Sundays or major holidays. The applicant will provide notifications through phone, text, or email to interested parties at least 24 hours prior and 1 hour before the actual shot time. The applicant provides third-party monitoring service and maintains seismograph equipment in affected areas to monitor each shot for air pressure and vibration compliance, and provide neighbors, upon request, portable seismograph equipment installed at their home for a time to track readings at their location, and also repair potholes and other damage on Hamstring on a continuing basis. Maintain average truck traffic of 200 trucks per day. They're not anticipating an increase in truck traffic. Also not significantly increasing number of employees on site. The applicant will maintain a neighborhood committee, which will meet at some reasonable frequency, and also fund an ombudsman, which will be an engineering firm based out of Washington County, approved by the applicant and the neighborhood committee, participate in that neighborhood committee, and collect neighbors' complaints and investigate them and report any non-compliance to the county. Furthermore, ingress and egress is limited to the existing point already on Hamstring. There's no new entrances or exits. And also maintain a 150-foot buffer and provide screening in the form of natural vegetation trees to minimize visibility from adjacent properties. The applicants are here with a presentation they'd like to provide.
One more slide, yeah. I talked to like multiple of the neighbors, and since we can't present all of their emails, I summarize the names of the neighbors they called us, and they are 34 of them right in front of you as promised.
All right, look like the list is kind of made up from the last quarry we looked at. Not the people who are against it, the conditions list.
Right.
Yeah, those basically were the conditions that we,
I try to maintain continuity.
yes, sir. All right, anyone have any questions of Blake? All right. We'll go to the audience, please.
Yeah, the applicant is here, and he wants to
Okay,
present
well, we'll
something.
go to the audience, and the applicant would be the first. If you're ready, go ahead.
Who's going first?
Applicant.
The applicant.
Just to be clear, am I going to get a chance at the end of the public comment to respond, like Nathan did for the previous ones? Okay.
So the presentation is there, and so we're limited to the amount of transmitters we have.
Oh, you want me to come sit over there?
Do what? Yeah. thank you.
All right, thank you, board members. It's good to be here with you guys. As you mentioned, some of these conditions were copied from the last presentation we did here. I did have a couple of sort of nits on those conditions. Just for clarification, there isn't a wheel wash here, we're committing to build one. So those notes that said there is a wheel wash and the trucks will go, that was from the, that must have been copied and pasted. from the
Just
previous.
one second.
Could you speak into the microphone?
I'm
I've got
sorry.
a hearing deficit. I'm having trouble hearing you.
Nita, would you,
Okay, my name is Andrew Effinger. I'm the Assistant General Counsel with the Rogers Group. We're a member of the Hunt Rogers joint venture that's the applicant here. I'm sorry, I was just trying to get a couple of issues cleared up on those notes from the planning board before we got started. There isn't a wheel wash system here. We're agreeing to build one. The note that there was one and the trucks go across it was from the previous quarry. And we did say that we blast about 1 day per week. It's news to us that that's gonna be a condition. I'm sorry. I'm trying to look all over the place here. So that wasn't in our mind a condition. We can have some more conversation about that after I get through the presentation here. Let's go ahead and get started here. The first thing I wanted to do, just to give you guys some context, is go through the site history. The Farmington Quarry was started in the late 90s by a guy by the name of John David Lindsay. I assume that's a name people know around here. Then later in 2006, the Rich property, which is some of the property we're going to be talking about today, was mined for red dirt, so the red dirt was stripped off of the top of it. Later on in 2010, the Rogers Group acquired this property out of bankruptcy from John David Lindsay. And in 2013, this quarry was contributed to the Hunt Rogers joint venture that we run here in Northwest Arkansas. Later on in 2018, we purchased parcel 11493, which is that same Rich property that was mined back in 2006 at an auction. Then in 2020 and in 2021, we acquired 2 more parcels that, as you'll see in this presentation, kind of fit nicely with the Rich property to create a long-term mine plan for the quarry here. These are some old pictures from Google Earth, just to give you some context. Here the quarry is in 2003. Here's the quarry in 2006 when that red dirt was being taken off of the Rich property up to the northwest. And here we are in 2021. As you can see, that Rich property has kind of gone back to nature, and we've stayed inside the bounds of our property that's grandfathered from zoning. So this is just a snippet of the map you guys have already seen. This is the area that we're proposing to develop to the northwest as the extended mine plan, the pit for this quarry that covers those 3 parcels. Just to run through the conditional use permit and the LSD requirements. We've met the application fee and notice requirements. I'll talk a little bit about public services, the compatibility, the public health, et cetera, surrounding property impacts, and orderly development. To start off with the public services, the quarry is going to stay on the utilities it's on right now. There's no change there. This is just simply long-term reserves. The pit will expand in this northwest direction. We'll still bring it to the plant that won't be on these properties. Drainage will continue to be controlled by our NPDES permit. We are not applying for any additional outfalls. There's not going to be any other points on this property that water is going to leave the site. We're going to construct this in a way to where all the water goes into the pit. We're already in compliance with the LSD regulations at our quarry, so a lot of the things as far as entrance roads and things like that aren't going to change. The entrance is already in compliance. We'll continue to clean them per the LSD regulations. As far as compatibility goes, this site is adjacent to an active mine that's been in activity since the 1990s. There's already been extraction on the site. We purchased it at an auction for this purpose. I think that's good evidence that using this site in this manner is the highest and best use of this property. This is an alternative that we've chosen to bring to the board instead of moving to the south to the Big Red Dirt Farm that's already an approved conditional use permitted site that was permitted back in 2010 that we acquired. We think it makes more sense to just extend the life of this mine out the current entrance than have another entrance just to the south on the same road. And we're also going to berm the perimeter to mitigate visibility, any noise and dust coming out of the pit to the neighbors that are impacted by these parcels. Just to make sure everybody understands, this kind of activity is monitored by the federal government. There's an organization known as MSHA, which is the equivalent of OSHA just for mining. It's the Mine Safety and Health Administration. that inspects our site regularly, tests for dust, tests for noise, actively on our employees up close to the plant to make sure that we don't have problems. The Arkansas DEQ is going to be the regulatory agency for site stormwater and environmental concerns, and there are also state blasting regulations here in Arkansas. The quarry's operated for over 30 years now without a negative impact on the neighborhood and the broader community. And actually, the products that we produce have a positive impact on the general welfare. Having good quality stone makes a location easier to develop. All right, as to the surrounding property impacts, this is where we are doing some mitigation. We want to go through here really quick on noise, dust, and vibration, which you guys saw was some of the concerns that were raised. On the blasting side, which does cause noise and vibration, we monitor it. We target to have half of the state limit impact at our property lines. And by targeting that limit, we keep it well below any regulation limits. Those regulations have been designed around the idea of the kind of vibration and air overpressure, I should say, that would damage property. So we're staying below the legal limits and targeting half of them. As for the crushing plant, which does create some noise and some dust, it's not on these parcels. It's going to continue to operate the way it was, so it's not really something that we need to talk about here today, but it is, and we can answer any questions you have, but it is monitored by MSHA for any noise and dust concerns. Equipment, we did have some people talk to us about the equipment that gets taken up there on the property. We do use white noise backup alarms instead of the piercing, high-pitched backup alarms that can really annoy people at a distance. So we're deploying those here to assist with the noise. Dust abatement, Sam just talked about it. We have a dust abatement plan in place. We're going to continue to follow it on the plant. The plant is a lot more of a dust issue than the pit necessarily. These are additional reserves. This is not a plant upgrade, so there is no real increase in truck traffic. Truck traffic is dictated by market demand, what kind of work is going on in the market. We'll continue to tarp the trucks just like we have been for LSD compliance. And as far as property concerns or property values are concerned, in our experience, we've read many studies. I didn't put anything in the record here, but there are studies that show that there are all kinds of things about your property that affect the property value more than being in any kind of proximity to a quarry. I'm happy to answer any questions about that after we wrap up here. As far as orderly development goes, what our goal here is at Hunt Rogers and at Rogers Group is to make generational decisions so a quarry can be where the quarry it can be and the community can plan around it. So approving this quarry allows for long-term supply for the local construction companies in the market. It allows the quarry to stay where it is. We know what these reserves are. We're in these reserves right now. We know it's good material. And it also allows for infrastructure planning around it. So if there's roads that need to be upgraded or shoulders that need to be added somewhere around here, you guys can do that knowing that that quarry is going to be there for a long time. I have the same ballpark conditions that Sam had. There's a couple of little tweaks that I mentioned. But basically, we're agreeing to a limitation on the plant operations, even though technically the plant's not even on this property. So we've got a limitation during the week and then a little bit different on the weekends. We are going to do the blast notifications. These kind of processes sometimes bring up a lot of neighbors that want to get on those lists. We're happy to add anybody to those lists that wants to. We do third-party monitoring of the air pressure and vibration monitoring during blasts. Anybody that would like to, we're more than happy to come put a portable seismograph in your yard. We're happy to have conditions applied for any of the permits we need, our ADEC permits, our MSHA permit, or MSHA's not really a permit. We're required to follow their rules by law, but we'll maintain all the required permits and all the regulations. There is this restriction that we've talked about the trucks turning, I think you called it to the south. We're calling it turning to the right, same point, so that the trucks go toward town out of our entrance and not to the north or to the left. And then, yes, we're agreeing to a neighborhood committee. We're probably going to have the same engineering firm that does the Springdale ombudsman role, be the ombudsman here. And with that, I'll open it up to questions.
I just had a question on who monitors the trucks, keeping them turning right or south?
We instruct them to. We keep an eye on them. We slap hands when anything is reported to us about them turning to the left. honestly, they are third parties, so we do the best we can. We're happy to take further steps, or we're happy for you guys to put some kind of load limit going north on the road, if that's what you want to do for the county. We just don't have that kind of authority. We can tell them what we want them to do, and we can tell them that they can't haul for us if they can't follow our rules. But outside of that, we kind of reach the limits of our authority.
We can request the road department to have a sign that says like no trucks.
Yeah.
Question. So, you mentioned this development instead of the Big Red Dirt Farm, correct? Can you give me a little information on the size of that piece versus what you're proposing now, when that LSD was approved, and how long it's in good standing for, please?
The LSD was approved, we were just talking about this, it was after we acquired the property in 2010, but before we put the property into the JV in 2013. So I want to say it's 2012. I didn't do a lot of research on that since that wasn't the main focus here. I want to say that's 87 acres. I don't know if there's anybody that can look at that parcel on a map. It's probably a little less than this 110. We go over there and we do a little bit of activity on it from time to time that would, we would argue keeps that conditional use permit active. The problem with that conditional use permit, though, is it was designed as a standalone quarry, right? So we have had some conversations with planning years and years ago about what that means for us going to the south and connecting to it, and it's kind of complicated how to interpret some of those conditions, given that it would be the pit with a plant not there. So there's some lack of clarity there about exactly what we have the right to do there. And then there was also litigation around that conditional use permit, so there's a consent decree that adds further conditions to it. Quite frankly, that's one reason why going in this direction for us makes a lot more sense. It was obviously in a place where some people didn't like it, and even though it is permitted, this to us seems like a direction where we can go away from people, where it's somewhere where people won't see. So that's why we're here today.
As I recall, when we approved the Hunt Rogers deal before, basically with this same set of performance criteria that you have, there was a commitment from Mrs. Hunt to acquire and place within, I think it was some sort of a reserve. I can't remember what they call it. There's a good name for it, but I don't remember what it was. A significant amount of land around the property to shield it from future growth. Mm-hmm. And of course, in that entire area out there, everybody wants to live there.
Yep.
And what are your thoughts? That's the big difference that I see in this question that we're facing today and the previous question which we approved.
Correct.
A couple, 3 years ago.
Yeah. So there were two conditions that were placed on that property to deal with two rather unique situations. One was the fact that, Miss Hunt's property that we lease from her butts down on Beaver Lake, right? And so the Beaver, I forget the name of the organization, the Beaver Water District, they wanted some commitment from us that we weren't gonna move closer to the lake. And we were happy to say, look, you approve this, we'll go no closer to the lake. So we did a conservation easement along the lake, right? The other issue was the neighbors there in Friendship neighborhood. As we moved the mine toward the Friendship folks, they were worried that this was just phase one and we were gonna be back in another so many years to get even closer to their houses. And we told them, no, we're gonna go to this line, we're gonna go no further. So we made a commitment to I think we called it a preservation easement, where basically Miss Hunt, and they're the owners of the land there, we leased into the joint venture. There can be no commercial development, it's gonna stay like it is, and we built a tree line along the berm just to protect the sight lines from that neighborhood. That's something that the Hunts wanted to do the right thing for those people that bought those properties from them years and years ago, right? The difference here is, number one, we're not near the lake, right? There isn't a body of water of any consequence near that significance to try to avoid. And the other thing here is, we're going to the limits of our property. We don't have the rights to go any further. And we haven't had people ask us about, are you coming any closer to our house? We can't go any further than this. This is literally our limits of our own property, and it'll be the limits of our mining limits pursuant to the conditional use permit. Whereas at Springdale, we had a whole bunch more property that we didn't want zoning on, and we put that condition on there to make people understand how serious we were.
You're still offering a 150-foot buffer.
Yeah, we're following, I can't remember off the top of my head, I think it may be an ADEC regulation already, so we're keeping the buffer off of the property, and not only are we keeping the buffer, we're building a berm. If you look at the topography of this site, you can see over here this big ridge line. See those trees there? We're gonna build a berm inside of those trees to protect. Even if you can see over the top of those trees, you'll see a berm that will eventually be grass. And then we're gonna build a berm on the other side, going back to let me jump back here. That green line, that green thick line is a berm that will be, I don't know, 50 foot tall in the center, something like that. It's a good use of the cap rock that we take off that isn't worth selling. We'll just build a big berm around it and let it grow up with grass so people have a natural site. And because of that topography, there will be a hole in the ground here, but people will be looking up and seeing the top of the berm and they won't see anything behind it.
So I have one more question for you, sir.
Sure.
You mentioned that this would fuel growth, and I know it's dependent upon the overall development of Northwest Arkansas. What is your anticipated timeline to develop this out? How much longer would this keep this mining business?
Yeah, I mentioned a generation. I think Dwayne said something in the meeting with the neighbors the other day about 30-plus years. It's in that time frame. It gets really tricky to understand how much rock per year we're gonna sell 20 years from now, right? So this is just like the Springdale thing. It's a generational decision. It could be 30 years, it could be 40 years, it could be 20 years, depending on what all goes on this side of town.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody got any questions? Okay, well,
I had one more, sorry.
okay.
We just mentioned that on our paperwork, we have the condition that it's one time a week, and you're saying that that is not.
Yeah, and the reason we say that, just to make sure, in full disclosure, that's one of the limitations at the Big Red Dirt Farm, is this blasting so often. Honestly, what happens is if we need to sell a bunch of rock and we can only blast once a week, guess what we have to do? A bigger blast. That doesn't make sense for anybody, right? We're gonna monitor our blasting impacts at our property lines, and we're gonna make sure that we stick to those targets of half the legal limit, and we're gonna maintain, we're gonna do the best we can to limit our exposure of our neighbors, and we don't wanna be stuck in a situation where to comply, we have to do something that pushes us up above those targets we wanna hold ourselves to. So that's why I respectfully ask that that be stricken, if that's okay with you guys.
Would you elaborate on the results of the interpersonal relationships between the neighbors and the management of the firm, and what's transpired since we approved this last one? Because there was a good deal of friction between the neighbors and the firm at the time.
Yeah, as to Springdale or as to here at Farmington?
At Springdale.
At Springdale, there was, and like I said, there were some feelings involved because they were dealing with the same people they bought their property from, and we were moving the mine toward them, right? So we worked with them, we formed a committee, we asked what the issues were, we had a meeting. We had the same meeting here a couple weeks ago, and about 20 people showed up. We showed them what we're gonna do. We talked about it. A lot of the people were concerned that we were gonna have a road or have an exit out of Rich's Road over here on the west side of this property, right? Those are the same kind of things we had at Springdale. We had some people concerned about things that weren't necessarily going to be the case, and that map looked different than people expected, and so people thought we were going up across a road we weren't even going across. So we've tried to facilitate the same kind of conversations here. We've had a meeting with the neighbors. I'm sure there's gonna be some neighbors here that are here to speak today, and if they've got legitimate, reasonable objections and there's something we can do to help, we're ready to help.
Could you elaborate on some of the examples of compliance with the agreements that were made whenever we did this? And I look at these questions are what's really happened since that time?
Yeah,
Because
since we did Springdale, we did the conservation easement. It's in a bank held by somebody that Beaver Water wanted to be the holder of the conservation easement. We did the easement for the development in the direction of the neighbors. We built a couple thousand feet of tree line along that ridge to make sure that by the time we get over there 20 years from now, those trees are tall enough to where that's all they see from that direction. We did install a tree line in the gaps on our berm along Parsons Road. We've built a little bit more berm to try to close off that whole view of the quarry north of the entrance. So we've done the things that we said we were going to do.
We spent years on the last one, and then we finally did approve it with the expectation that people's commitment would be held. One of the strong things that I perceive was Mrs. Hunt's putting the land in conservation easement that affirmed to her commitment. Can you give us some examples of what you all have done with the drivers that causes them to comply with what the regulations are?
Yeah, at Springdale, we've got a condition that they go through the wheel wash, which we will have here. You know, where, like I said, we're willing to build the wheel wash. It doesn't exist. But typically, if you're not going to go through the wheel wash, you're not going to haul for us. And in this case, it'll be the same kind of condition for this turning right. If you don't turn right, you're not going to haul for us, and we hold people accountable. The one beauty of the ombudsman is you guys can rest assured, and the neighbors can rest assured, that they've got somebody to reach out to that's a disinterested third party that will report to you guys if we don't help out with a situation, right? There's always going to be times where one trucker does the wrong thing, it gets reported, we tell them not to do it again, and they don't do it again. You know, just like anybody else, a hauling company's hiring new drivers every once in a while, and sometimes people make mistakes. But what we do is ultimately, if we get repeats and you can't follow the instructions and you get reported to us more than one time, you're just not going to haul for us anymore.
Has that happened?
Yes, we have some people. I don't know if you guys want to speak to the individual examples. I know I've heard stories of folks that don't get to haul for us anymore. I can't name names.
I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
One final question. I said I was done, but,
That's fine.
so just for clarification, you're not talking about a second crusher, you're not talking about a second entrance, you're not talking about any additional traffic on the road, you're talking about moving product to the existing crusher, using the existing infrastructure to move product out of here, correct?
Yes. Yes. I think someday as we progress in that direction, we may be back here talking about the plant moving down to that big red dirt farm or something like that someday, but we understand that we can't do that without coming back and talking to you guys, and we'll address that then.
Any other questions? All right, I'm going to open it up to the audience. There's several people here. We're going to limit public comment to 3 minutes per person, and if you're in a group, you can have 10 minutes. So I'll start with this gentleman. What's your name and address, please?
Good afternoon. My name is Jim Gallagher. I am an architect here in Fayetteville, and I live across Hamstring from the entrance to the quarry. His job was to put makeup on the pig. Mine is to tell you that it's just makeup. The time frame is all wrong. I sat where you're sitting from 2008 to 2010. Before I sat there, Big Red Dirt Farm was approved. While I was sitting there between 2008 and 2010, this project came in. This project has never been approved. The first owner started the work, said he was grading the site, and nobody bothered him. When zoning came in, this predecessor, Lindsay's group, came in and told the county attorney and judge, different people back then, that they were already there. When they came in here for their approval in 2009 and claimed grandfathering, we showed the county that they had never gotten a permit. They were not grandfathered. It was all illegal, but nobody would do anything about it. They have never been approved by the county to operate a quarry there. They had a boundary that was going on at that time, an informal boundary. They are now way outside of that boundary. They do not blast once a week. They blast as often as they like. They do not notify us before the blast. In fact, this month, I got a phone call notifying me of the blast 30 minutes after it happened. Now, if you want to understand what this is about, do any of you remember when we had an earthquake in Oklahoma one Saturday morning about 7 o'clock, and we all felt it? Does anybody remember that? We have that every week in our house. No, the damage from one blast is not a big deal, but it's hammering week after week after week on our house. It happens all the time. They tell you they protect these drivers. They tell them what to do. I drove on the way out here to see you tonight behind a truck, fully loaded, with no tarp. They don't make them tarp up on the site. They tell them to tarp, and they hope they'll do it. If you drive down Hamstring southbound from this entrance, you will see piles of gravel on the sides of the road where they make a turn and the gravel spills out. This goes all the way out onto the state highway on Weddington Drive. When they turn out on the Weddington Drive, there is a whole new pile of gravel on the sides of the road where they dump it out on the road. Last month, I drove back in. I didn't see it fall off a truck, but there was a chunk of rock the size of your fist in the road. If your children were driving behind that thing, this would have come through their windshield. These people are not safe. This is not good for us. When I was here, that was turned down by this board. It was turned down by the quorum court. They appealed it to the state courts. When we had an attorney that could fight them and win in court, they never got approval. They withdrew it before they could get to the Supreme Court. They quit. And they just left with their grandfathering boundaries. They're not even within that anymore. And I don't see anybody here trying to do anything about it. When we request the drone survey that you folks have done, we're told that's not available to us. The reason it's not available is because it shows they're outside the boundaries of where they were previously allowed, and nobody in the county wants to admit it. You have to turn this down. It wasn't a good idea in 2009. It's not a good idea today.
Okay. I've given
Thank you for
plenty of
listening.
time. Thank you. Thank you.
I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Okay.
Sorry, I got a lot of show and tell for you. My name's Terry Davis Beaupre. I live at 16035 Beech Nut Lane. That's right smack in the middle of Weddington Woods. Here's a map of the Northwest Arkansas region that was first seen by this planning board body in February of 2019. Dr. Von Brahana was discussing the CUP for the Heritage Farms mining property, which this body did not approve. In addition to fault lines, it illustrates just how much of the Boone Formation material is present in the area. That's the weathered dirt on top of the strata with a layer of limestone immediately beneath. The availability for this resource here measures 1,250 square miles. This map of our community outlines a 3.2 square mile portion of that 1,200 square mile total. It shows that a full 1/3 of this small area has mines and quarries. Since current county administration came into power, it has facilitated mine operators, bypassed county ordinances, looked the other way, and is now fast-tracking a CUP in tandem with an LSD. In the fall of 2019, a planning department presentation for the Weddington mine properties said the mine in the middle was retired. That was not true then, and it is not true now. During the same meeting, the mine on the western edge of the Weddington Woods subdivision was depicted as encompassing only a single parcel, when in fact, the county attorney has declared that all 4 of these parcels are designated as a mine. That's your letter, Brian. Finally, here's an email obtained with a recent FOIA from the Planning Department, where the Planning Department actually was aiding Weddington Mine Properties to obtain a stormwater permit from ADEQ for a project that would have 5 acres of disturbed area. Let this sink in for just a minute. This is the planning director, with knowledge that a 5-acre tract of soil will be removed and sold without even mentioning a potential need for a CUP. And I left the Heritage Mine Farms at the bottom, even though it is still in appeal, because a recent online posting from one of our county judge candidates showed him and his family in a Heritage Farms vehicle in a parade. He has voted consistently for mining and quarry operations and against the citizenry that opposed them. I doubt he will change this mindset if elected. The current county administration has turned this into an environmental justice issue. If there was some equity in this situation, given the 1,200 square miles of resource availability, it would be easier for us to understand. But we are being targeted. We are supposed to have the right to the peaceful enjoyment of our property. When a community with over 1,000 households and more than 3,000 residents are asked to bear the brunt of this burden, there is no peace.
Man, we need to wrap this up.
No peace. We are not anti-progress, but we are being ground into dust beneath this county's growth machine.
Hi, I don't know if I'm going to be that powerful, but my name is Audra Darling, and I live at 6286 El Paso Drive in Fayetteville. And I have really appreciated the board and y'all's due diligence, listening to y'all handle other cases. And we're talking about turning up a boombox at the lake, and we're talking about putting sticks of dynamite that shake our homes. So I feel like that since y'all are being so diligent about protecting those folks at the lake, I'd really appreciate it if you would give us the same consideration. And I do love Northwest Arkansas. It is my home, and I'm super proud to live here. And one thing, especially Fayetteville, and one thing that really sets Fayetteville apart from, let's say, Springdale, is the lack of 18-wheelers and the lack of dump trucks and the peaceful, laid-back vibe that Fayetteville gives. And today, y'all aren't coming up against Lindsay, Mr. Lindsay, who've done a lot for our community. We're coming up against the Rogers Group. We have Fayettevilleans that live here. We have college students on the road. We keep expanding westward, and our infrastructure already is filling that pool from all of the new developments that are out in the west area. And if this growth continues at this rate, this mine's going to be in town before we know it. So I just would please, I thank you for your service, and I really hope that you consider the generations of farmers that have lived out on this land, that have chosen the country life, and our students and the safety of our drivers, the safety of our water. They're talking about taking out an entire mountain, and not to mention all of the animals and trees and everything that the life and the water that it holds. He says, I made a note. Hold on, let me look. I'm so sorry. There was something that he said that was like, we're just going to wash it off and let it all go into the big hole. Where do you think that water goes from that hole? It goes into our wells, and it goes into our drinking water, and it goes into our lakes and our rivers. It doesn't just get to wash down the hole and disappear. I also wanted to point out that they did buy this from an auction, so you'd think they got a pretty good deal on it already, and with property values, I don't feel like that there's an actual loss that they would accrue from not expanding. I thought that was interesting, and I do appreciate your time. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jennifer. I live at 15959 Hamstring Road. I am strongly opposed to the Farmington Quarry Expansion High Intensity Project. I am someone who has to live with the hardships and nuisances provided by this mine. My voice represents the voice of many of my neighbors who are not able to make this meeting today in person, but whom are also strongly opposed to the expansion of this mine. I took time knocking on doors, sitting in living rooms and chatting with my neighbors about how they felt about this mine. People told me about the terror their children and pets felt every time the mine put off an explosion, that the mine had in previous city meetings promised that their blasts were no stronger than a door slamming, yet our entire houses are shaking violently and causing broken windows and damage to our homes, that blasts would be limited to 1 per week, which we all know is not what actually happens. One woman shared that her historic house is no longer livable and she has to evacuate it due to the damage caused by the mine. Everyone was unhappy about the dust on everything, the loud and constant construction noise with loud beeps at 6 a.m., the treacherous driving of the constant stream of trucks on our road. One neighbor reported she got driven off the road into a ditch. She tried to contact the mine. No one got back to her about it. Everyone was unhappy and about the lowered property values, which would only get worse with the expansion of this mine, and of course the intense shaking from the explosions. I asked my neighbors, do you want this mine to expand? Every single person I spoke with said emphatically no. My voice also represents the faith-based community of 50 families who consider our land a sanctuary. We educate the local community about natural food and homesteading on our farm, as well as gather and commune in reverence of God in our outdoor church. Members of our community have written the planning board letting them know of the devastating impact that this mine expansion would have on our community. We implore you to deny the permit for Rogers Group Incorporated to do their dirty work in our backyard. This sort of operation is not appropriate to be conducted so close to our residences. High-intensity blasting should be conducted far outside populated areas so as not to disrupt the peace of all the citizens. Let us hold faith in our elected officials of the local government to protect us, represent us, and make the decision that considers our hardship, health, and safety to our homes. Please hear us. We unanimously vote no to this expansion. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Joni Overton. I live at, I'm sorry, I'm nervous, 14699 Appaloosa Circle. Now, this is on the west side of Weddington Woods. We do have a quarry that is operating, not a quarry, a dirt pit that's operating behind us. So we do get a lot of the same concerns that the people that are looking at Rogers Hunt has, so far as the normal things, the dust, the noises, everything else. I'd just like to add to everything else that has been said that we have an overabundance of in-your-face stuff from these quarries and dirt pits. From the time we leave our homes to the time we hit the interstate, we have nothing but trucks and dust and noise. And I would like to request respectfully that this be tabled for a time until a discussion can be made that is more equitable to the people that live in this area. Something that gives us an assurance that yes, the berm's going to be made. Yes, the dust is going to stop because of the berm. My husband worked in quarries for years. He knows the berms don't keep out the dust the way they should. 150 feet border is not a very big border to protect people from the noises and the irritating things from a quarry. Let's discuss this. Right now, if this passes, we feel like it's crammed down our throat. You know, everybody says, you know, I don't want this in my backyard, but man, this feels like it's in our front yard. So, you know, try to keep us in your thoughts as you vote, that as residents in an area that is affected, sorry, I'm so nervous, you know, just keep us in those thoughts. We are like anybody else that loves quiet and solitude. You know, you sit there and say 6 o'clock to 6 o'clock during the week. We can tolerate that if there's things that help us tolerate it. Weekends, let's have a break. Weekends are crazy to be sitting there working in a quarry and listening to the noise. We're woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning with backup alarms on Saturdays and Sundays, and even on Thanksgiving last year, on the weekend on Thanksgiving Day. So I would like to see assurances that if this is passed, that they will hold up their end of the bargain and work with the neighborhoods. I like the idea of having a committee to join with the neighborhood group so we can have a two-way conversation. But once this is passed, do they have to adhere to anything that is decided in this? So we just would like to have some assurances. I thank you for this chance to talk to you, and I especially thank you for the work you do for the county.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Kenneth Webb. I live next door to the mine at 15959 Hamstring Road. I am a U.S. Navy veteran, engineer, craftsman, and artisan. Our lives are being disrupted by the activities of this nearby mine. Our possessions, equipment, livestock, and garden crops are being covered in carcinogenic dust and debris, specifically erionite, which is well documented in many accredited studies as it directly resembles asbestos and directly causes mesothelioma. We are constantly bombarded with excessive noise from heavy equipment and trucking operations in all hours of the day. Trucking operations using exhaust braking day in and day out. And those trucks come and go freely in both directions along all the side roads. This mine uses blasting techniques multiple times per week and frequently multiple times per day against clear regulations, specifically twice on Tuesday, September 27th, one blast of which knocked stuff off the walls, made the house completely vibrate. These blasts shake the entire house and barn, causing broken windows and damage to the foundations. This damage is well documented both personally and by numerous geological studies of building damage due to vibrations from rock blasting. We cannot allow the expansion of this mine closer to us to enrich the profits of the few at the expense of the many. The Rogers Group has shown history of disregard for the citizens of Washington County and has chosen not to build this mine in their own neighborhoods and backyards, but instead conduct these operations where they see the land and the people as disposable. The Rogers Group has placed their organization in an extremely actionable position, and we the people have had enough. Thank you.
That was a lot. Okay. Sherry Main, 15451 Riches Road, Fayetteville. I live on Riches Road. I've lived on Riches Road for 55 years. And as long as I can remember in my lifetime, we've had dirt pits around us. I don't recall ever not seeing a dump truck on Whittington Drive. With that said, someone told me once, a borrowed view is on borrowed time. I recently experienced that. It hit home with me. Part of the 40 acres of the 107 acres that Hunt Rogers wants to expand this quarry on was my home. It was my
dream home. We bought the property, we totally gutted the house. We made it my Ponderosa, and that's what I've always wanted. And we had cattle, we had a farm, my husband had cattle and I had horses. We were living the dream. And then in 2019, my husband was diagnosed with small vessel disease in his heart. And in 2020, he had several stents put in his LAD vein, which is his main artery in his heart. And health-wise, he couldn't keep up with the farm anymore. We had to make a decision to sell our dream home. Well, on the east side of us is the current operating quarry of Hunt Rogers. On the 100 and I believe they said it was 129 acres. That's the grandfathered part, or as a non-conforming use prior to countywide zoning in 2006. And then in 2018, they bought 63 acres from Mark Rich. I was at that auction, and they did, I mean, at that time, the land was worth more money. It was an auction, you know. But they did pay consistently a lot more for it than Weddington Mine paid for their 60-something acres. And we were surrounded. I had Hunt Rogers on the east side. I had Hunt Rogers on the north side, which was the Mark Rich property. And I had Hunt Rogers surrounding me on the west side, and then I had Weddington Mine. And this is all at the end of Rich's Road. It's a dead-end road. It goes nowhere. It stops at the end of the road is my driveway to my house. And so after a lot of hard thinking, praying, wondering what to do, we ended up selling our dream home to Hunt Rogers. They didn't steal it from us. They paid us the fair market of it. I don't know that that was the fair market it would have if a quarry hadn't been behind it. I don't know. But I speak firsthand about living next to a quarry in my backyard for 12 years and having it on the end of my road in proximity to my home. I've always lived on Rich's Road. So for 55 years or 30 years, how long they say they've been there, I've dealt with it. And I just wanted to bring that out and just get it out there. I've been called, I've threw them under the bus, I've been called a little of everything, selling out to Hunt Rogers. I don't call it a sellout. I call it a hard decision in life that we had to make. And I wanted to stress that. That's a little history, but what I wanted to go over is the staff report. And I visited on the phone with Sam and Blake in detail about this. And these conditions that were put on here,
We need to,
I know
Get
my 3
to-
minutes are up, but I'm speaking for the whole Rich's Road. Can I have 5?
okay.
In my phone conversation with them, when I got this notice that they were going to expand, I had several questions. I didn't know they were going to expand. When I sold my property to them, I thought it would be someday. I didn't know it was going to be a year and a half later. But anyway, with that, I called them and I said, you know what? I said, I was in on the meeting with the Springdale Quarry when they wanted to expand that. And I have a few ideas that I think that we should put in this staff report for the surrounding neighbors. I said we should put the same conditions that was put on the Springdale Quarry. I said because if we don't get them on the front end, you're not going to get them. And if you don't ask, you don't receive. So that's why the conditions, I had them go back to that Springdale approval and look at the conditions, and that's why the conditions are pretty much mirrored from the Springdale Quarry expansion. A few of them I do have a few questions on.
on the conditions, on the number 5, which they've already addressed that, is to maintain an average blasting of once a week. They blast on average sometimes 2 times a week, sometimes 1 time a week. And if they have a blast, the charge doesn't go off as it should have, they'll do another blast, a secondary blast. I know, I've lived there for a long time, and I know how they operate. And I wanted to get clarification on the hours. On number 6, on the conditions, it says that the applicant shall limit the hours to 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Friday, and 6 a.m. to 12 on Saturday, with no operations taking place on Sunday or major holidays. Well, in their application they submitted to planning, it stated they would have operating hours of Monday through Friday, 6 to 4, and they would be closed on Saturday and Sunday. That was on the application they submitted to planning. So I want to get clarification on the hours. And then on number 7, on the blast notifications, I get a blast notification still. I still just live up the road. I sold my dream home, bought a double-wide mobile home, and moved it on my 3.5 acres just up the road. I haven't gone anywhere. I'm still affected by it. It's not in my back door, but I'm just up the road. So my interest in all of this is to be an advocate for the neighbors. I know they may not seem to think that way, but I want to be an advocate, and I want to express concerns that my neighbors have. I was a neighbor, and I am a neighbor. So going on down this list, I'll try not to get off chasing rabbits. On number 11, maintain an average truck count of 200 per day, okay? That's 50 trucks hauling 4 loads a day. If 50 trucks are hauling and they're cycling in and out with 4 loads, that's 200 trucks. I wanted to just kind of get that in perspective.
Ma'am,
On number 14.
We're way over time here. We need to wrap
Okay.
this up.
I have so many good ideas here. I'm so sorry I didn't get to all of them because I was at my beginning, but I just wanted to clarify on their attorney that asked about the project that on the Big Red Dirt Pit. That was in our conversation too. That's 57 acres, and it's project 2008-162, and it was approved by the planning March 26, 2009, and it was approved by the applicant, Jerry Sweetser, and his partner. It was not approved to Rogers Group or Hunt Rogers. It already had an existing cup when they bought it in 2013. So I wanted to clarify that and let you know the history behind that. And it does have a very strong cup on it with limitations of blasting 1 time a month. Very strong limitations. And I wanted to make sure that that cup would stay with that property. And if it does, since they own it now, is it under the existing conditions that was approved? And is it
The red dirt,
perpetual
we're
to
not-
run with the
We're not
parcel?
discussing the red dirt mine today.
But those are questions I had. Is it perpetual to run with the parcel? Thank you. Because that's been 12 years ago it was approved. And Hunt Rogers has been a good neighbor to me. I will say that. I mean, I can't lie.
Good evening, Josh Moody, Fayetteville. I want to be clear that I was not that candidate in the social media post, though I was two vehicles ahead of him walking alongside a truck, greeting people along the way. Raise your hand if you'd like this operation in your neighborhood. Raise your hand if it would be appropriate for you to deal with this at 6 a.m. on any day of the week, much less Saturday. I don't think the 34 complainants are just bored. I don't think the people behind me are just bored. And I'm not the expert in this. The experts are behind me in this situation. here in Washington County, I feel like we should be good neighbors. It doesn't sound like this overall, based on what we're hearing tonight and based on what you've been hearing for months and years, is somebody acting like a good neighbor. People that have lived out there, they've lived out there for decades, if not generations. They didn't live out there to have loud earthquakes next to their, or inside their home every week, or if not more often. It's dangerous, it's destructive, it's unhealthy. It's causing issues for 1,000 households' quality of life. I think that's worth your consideration. I ask that you have a little empathy for that. I mentioned neighbors earlier. Northwest Arkansas Board of Realtors, who gave my opponent thousands of dollars recently. One of their big concerns is property rights. What about the property rights of the people behind me? Please reconsider this, and from what I'm hearing tonight, this isn't even legal now as is. It would be much worse when it's expanded. Somebody needs to step in and decide that rules are rules, laws are laws, ordinances are ordinances, and disallow this to continue. Thank you. Have a good evening. Thank you for what you do.
My name's Ernie Overton. I live at 14699 Appaloosa Circle. And the Rogers presentation was well written. I've written several of them over 48 years in blasting and mining. But I do like the MSHA. I'm also an MSHA instructor to train the miners that work in the Rogers Quarry. I have never done them because I worked up in Indiana. But as far as the dust meters, yes, they're supposed to wear them. But many times I've seen them hanging in the dozer or underneath the seat, so they don't actually wear them. The miners don't, because I caught many of them over the years not doing that. So the results that they're getting are not correct. Okay, I want you to keep that in mind about the dust for their employees. The other thing about blasting is I'm a certified blaster, was until I retired, in many states. The staying at half of the legal limit is a good start, but it depends on the frequency and the hertz of the vibration waves going through the ground. You can have a half-inch reading on your peak particle velocity, but if you got 3 hertz, your house sits there like a bowl of Jell-O, just shaking. So keep that in mind when you look at this. You're not getting the true data from the report that the Rogers Group give, other than just saying, trying to stay half the legal limit. Up in Indiana, in Indianapolis, up in Carmel, they put a 0.25 limit on peak particle velocity in those quarries up there around Carmel, okay? So those are things you have to really look at and that you understand them, because you don't get all the facts. That's all I got to say.
Eduardo Espejel. I'm a builder. I know how.
Can you give us your address, sir?
16,000 Hamstring Road, 15998 Hamstring Road,
Okay, thank you.
15996 and 81. So I have a lot of interest in this area. And I'm a builder. So I know how important it is for us to get materials. When we build a house, I remember that they used to do a blast about every week, 5 years ago. And now it's been so constant that it's been so scary. We have tenants in our houses. Every morning, they're worried about taking their kids to school because we see more trucks and trucks every day. So I wonder if they are allowed to do the expansion, I know that the area needs the materials, right? And also I need the materials so I could keep working. But who is gonna really monitor what they're doing if they don't do it now? And they talk about letting us know when they're gonna do the blasting, but they don't do it in good faith now. Why should we believe them? Who is gonna really be taking care of those procedures, and that they're gonna be taking care of and actually doing it? So I'm worried about my family, because what we have invested here is not only for me, but it's also for my kids. So that's all I had to say today. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Molly Kleinhens. I live at 3335 South School Avenue. I am here as a concerned citizen and neighbor and member of the community that my friend Jennifer mentioned. There is a community out there, so I think it's important to consider that what we're looking at here, the effects are not only on the neighbors who live in the area, but also on the broader community. And what I would really like to encourage you to do is to appeal to the long-term view and the community as a whole. The community space that we have there is one of environmental education, education about sustainable living, which in these times is very much needed. These are very uncertain times. So any community space that is helping new generations understand how to live more sustainably on Earth is something that we should be supporting, encouraging, and not jeopardizing. And this is one of the spaces that is physically jeopardized by the expansion, proposed expansion of this mine. I have questions about, I don't know what the law is exactly on this, but has there ever been an environmental impact assessment for the mine as it exists, or for this proposed expansion? Is that not a requirement in the state of Arkansas or Washington County? Because I imagine you'd find major disturbances to the ecosystem. What happens to the water? Both the water that is extracted, which is voluminous from what we've seen from the presentation, and the water that, again, is pumped into one of these holding tanks, or I don't know how they even do it. As one colleague mentioned, where does that water go? That the waste from the mine leaches into the groundwater. You have springs on the properties there. That's a valuable resource, not just for the people who live on these properties, but for all of us. All of us need to be taking care of our water. Anything that jeopardizes our water is of all of our concern. So I would implore you to take the long view of this. And the long view is what is best for the environment. And this is, you know, the greater Fayetteville community. This is of concern to all of us. I also just want to point out that, you know, the company, Rogers Group, which there seems to be a lot of issues there in terms of their compliance to date with what they've said they're going to do, but the setting up things such as an ombudsman, all these mitigation, you know, techniques, I want to point out that even in the best case scenario where they are complying with that, where they are doing what they've committed to do, you still have these unresolved issues of what's going on with the water, what about the irrevocably affected property values of residents. So to me, it just seems very clear what is going on and that you are in a position to really make the right choice here. So please do not permit this expansion. Thank you.
Diana Gallagher, 12279 Martin Road. So my driveway and my mailboxes are immediately across the street from the Rogers Quarry. Number one, thank you for your time and your service. I would also like to thank the representative from the Hunt Rogers Quarry for coming to answer questions. But this is not the first time that we've had a meeting with the representative from Hunt Rogers. When all of this first began, their representative met with the community at the Weddington Fire Department. And we were told, probably 50+ neighbors, that they would be the best neighbor we could ever ask for. We were assured that wells would not be affected, that groundwater would not be affected, that our homes would not be affected. I replaced my kitchen window 3 times before I replaced all the windows in the house because the windows kept cracking after repetitive blast. My foundation has cracks, and my 3 wells have all gone dry. And when I had more water systems out to evaluate what happened, the gentleman who's lived here for generations stood there and he said, "I don't need to say anything else. That's a quarry. That's where your water's at." This has affected the community. It affects our generation and our future generation, both in what we hope to leave our children someday, as well as our quality of life. My youngest granddaughter used to come and visit on a Saturday morning and say, "Grandma, the diggers are back." And she knew that at the age of 6 because of all the noise. I've been involved in this from the beginning, meeting at the Weddington Fire Department and hearing promises after promises. None of them were held. Veracity is something I have to question. So I implore you to please vote against this. We were told in the beginning that when they ran out of land, this would be over, and that terrible hole in the ground would become a beautiful lake that we would be so proud to live next to. There's nothing that makes anyone proud to live next to it, and it does affect property values. It affects our quality of life. And it affects our health and well-being. You heard mention of carcinogens. Silica is something I've talked on before to the quorum court, and one of the reasons that the miners need to wear protective equipment is to protect them. But all of that's going into our air and our groundwater, and what's to protect us? So thank you for giving this careful consideration, and if we have no other responsibility, we have a responsibility to protect our neighbors, to protect our health and well-being. And living to a quarry challenges health and well-being on every level. Please vote to stop this continued invasion into our community. It is in no one's best interest. Thank you.
Thank you for staying so late to listen to our concerns. My name is Kiki Bernards. I live at 329 Railway Road in Tawnytown. I am a patron of Apple Star Farms. I am part of the community. I partake of the farm goods that come from this part of the valley. This is an ancient riverbed that has laid the land flat and clean. And there are generational farms that have been there for years before this mine found the deposits from this river. Now, this is a new acquirement for Rogers Hunt Group. And according to Rogers Group, their website, Rogers Group is the largest privately owned construction, aggregate, crushed stone, sand and gravel company in the United States. In addition, 70 quarries serve 11 states. So the Rogers Group, this fine gentleman, stated that it would service the community to help with the roads and the expansion. We do know that expansion is coming here to Northwest Arkansas, but I believe that with 70 quarries and the largest state, we have deep, deep pockets that we are fighting against. And they clearly think that they can act without impunity. And he said it himself. What can we do? Oh, we can give them a slap on the hand if they don't follow the rules. And they have gotten away with it. They haven't even gotten a slap on the hand. There has been no justice because their pockets are so deep. It is imperative to do the right thing, not the convenient thing. Sure, it would add taxes, but we get taxes in lots of places. Do you want to have a happy community? Do you want to have children? What do you want to see? Children who I bring to the farm to work on. When this, if, I'm not saying when, if this would be approved, you would take away the hill that blocks directly to Apple Star Farm. It would be decimated. The berm that they would build is not as high as the hill that they would remove. And it would affect all of the animals, all of the vegetation, all of the people, and what goes out to the rest of the community. This is so beautiful here. It is a gem. And we need to protect this. Rogers Hunt Group is going to go on, whether it's here or not, but it should not be here. Thank you.
My name is Chelsea Udi. I live on 19838 Combsville Road, Elkins, Arkansas. I am from Fayetteville. I grew up on Dead Horse Mountain. All of my family has farmed here. I represent the community that Ms. Jennifer is talking about, and she's not exaggerating when she says there are 50 families that enjoy that land. And there are animals, farm animals, plants, gardens, families. And I just want to reiterate that we don't want this because it is detrimental to many lives, more than 1,000, because this affects our entire community on a larger scale. So I just thank you for your time, and I just want you to keep that in mind.
Good evening. Thank you for your patience. My name is Roma Gray. I live at 15946 Harp Road. My property is directly north of the current quarry. As was mentioned, they were grandfathered in 06, and by 09, they were asking for 100+ acres of expansion. We've been through this before. As others have said, it was a long process. This court in 2009 denied approval for this expansion, and the vote was 10-2. There's a reason why that vote was that way. Some of you were here before and some were not. We have been dealing with the quarry for the last 13 years, since we were here before, fighting against the expansion. The little mountain that was mentioned is north of the current quarry. They are wanting to expand further north and west. This little mountain is currently covered with old, large trees. It separates the quarry from a lot of farms and people and Hamstring Creek. And although it is not Beaver Lake, it is a watershed of the Illinois River. Pretty important little tributary. The Fayetteville Natural Heritage Association has deemed this Hamstring Creek Valley as an important part of the Green Corridor. There will be environmental impacts. You can't keep all the water on their side of the mountain. When they move to the north and to the west, we're gonna lose all of the buffer that we have, the little bit that we currently have that mitigates some of the sound and some of the dust. Nothing mitigates the blasting, nothing. I hope that you will deeply consider the long-term impacts of making a decision about allowing 100 more acres of land to be turned into a limestone quarry. They have not been good neighbors. It looks good on paper. It sounds like there are mitigating effects, but when you live with it every day, it takes a toll on you. You guys can probably see there's a little bit of fear in some of our voices and a little bit of anger because we've been dealing with it every day. They're wanting 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., 12 hours of a day that they're gonna get to be a nuisance and a safety problem and a health concern for all of us. Please understand that this is so important to a lot of people and also to the environmental quality that we all need to start looking at preserving each little bit that we can as soon as we can. Thank you.
My name is Michael Luna. I live at 15946 Harp Road, which is directly north of the quarry across Hamstring Creek. I believe that they start before 6 a.m. actually, and I don't know what the man was talking about mitigated beepers, because there's ear-splitting beepers going on from the time that they start operations until, I guess when they stop. And they've come over on our side of the hill, which at once upon a time they told us they would not do many years ago, but I guess they have no actual operating permit right now, so they do whatever they want. They told us once upon a time they wouldn't get down into the water table, and probably lessen the creek, and now it's full of water and a pump runs 24/7 over there, so they've done that. And what Mr. Gallagher said is true. I don't think that they've ever actually been permitted, and they've just acted like that they are. I would like to reiterate that the good neighbor policy is just, it's a sad joke is what it is. They're horrible neighbors. If I had any other neighbors that started making noise before 6 a.m., I would not think that they were good neighbors, and I don't think anybody here would think that. Oh, and to address the original expert that came in about the blast said that it would have the effect of slamming your front door. Well, I guess we should have asked him, because it seems like the door must have weighed about 4,000 pounds and was being slammed by a gorilla, because that is the effect. On the 3rd floor of my house, if I happen to be up there when they blast, it will nearly knock you down from the vibration. So, there's no way that, You know, and I'm not against business, my wife owns one, but when somebody else has to bear the brunt of you making money, that's just not, that's not correct. And we're all bearing the brunt of these people making money, and we're not getting any positive benefits out of it. Our property values have been lessened. So, you know, it's just a horrible deal for everybody but Rogers Group and the small amount of employees that they have. And just like any corporation, their focus is on their return on investment. And I'm sure most of the investors for this corporation are not in Arkansas or in this area. So it really doesn't behoove anybody here for this thing to go on. And, you know, it's not in my backyard issue because it's been in our front yard and our backyard now for over a decade. So it needs to have a limited life and let somebody else bear the brunt of this moving forward. You know, we've had enough actually. And I'm sure it'll continue regardless if they get this expansion or not. But we need the peace of mind to know that it's something finite. And if they go on for 30 years, and you know, I'm not going to make another 30 years probably. So it's infinite as far as my time on this earth goes. So I would like to see an end of it before I die. And if they're allowed to expand, you know, I'm not going to see that. And I sure would like to have some days in peace out there, and we don't get it right now. It's just all day long noise and beepers and the engine braking that they're not supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be mitigating that, and it goes on all day long with engine braking, which is extremely loud, like bone-jarring loud. Thank you for your time. I sure appreciate y'all.
Anyone else like to speak?
I've tried to take some notes here to come up with some responses to some of the concerns raised. If you'd like, I could just start with those, or if you'd like to just ask me some questions based on what you've heard, either way.
I don't know. What would the board like to do?
What? Yes, I'll be as brief as I can. I do think it's good that one of the members of the public brought up sustainability. As to the point about how much of this material is available throughout the state, one thing missing from this conversation has been proximity. These minerals need to be very close to the end users. The longer we truck them, the more diesel is burned in trucks, and the more it costs. You haul this stuff 30 miles from the quarry, and it costs twice as much. So one of the reasons why we always have these conflicts, we talked about it at Springdale, is that the community moves toward us because it's more inexpensive to build near us. As to the environmental effects, there has been evidence that inhaling silica over the lifetime working at a mine can cause cancer. This is not a deposit that has silica in it. This is a natural limestone that hasn't been found to have those same kinds of silica levels as things like asbestos or wall panels and those kind of things. We test with MSHA at the point of the highest dust exposure, and then from there it goes into the air. So we are ensuring that our workers are safe at the worst points for dust. The truck count that was mentioned about Big Red Dirt Farm, I did want to mention that the limitation on the trucks was in addition to our quarry at the time when that got approved. So I don't think that would apply here. One thing I would suggest to the neighbors is to come to these meetings we've scheduled. I thought it was interesting that we had about 20 people by our count at our neighborhood meeting, and we had 34 responses come into you guys. We love to talk to the neighbors who have issues and work through them the best we can, but there are some folks that come to these meetings to talk to you guys before they've talked to us, and I don't think that's helpful. I think the ombudsman idea that we talked about setting up the neighborhood committee, inviting the neighbors to be there, giving the ombudsman's contact information to them so that if there's problems not being resolved, they can report it through to the planning commission, is the way to handle these things going forward. And again, this is about the expansion up to the northwest. if you look at the houses, we're moving further away from a lot more people than we're moving close to. And we are protecting those views. I'm not sure where the specific people were talking about being able to see our pit, but the idea is to make a hole in the ground that they don't see at all. I could also go through the history. You know, there's some accusations that we don't have a permit. If you would like me to, I can answer questions about how that has all evolved over the history.
So I had one question. So the neighborhood committee does not exist now.
We had a neighborhood meeting leading into this meeting. We don't have a standing committee
So
at the Farmington site. We do at Springdale.
Okay. So that's something that would come about. What would be the makeup of that committee?
We would invite the neighbors to appoint their own representatives. What happened at Springdale was it was the people that were at the first community meeting that we had that were willing to come back to another meeting. Part of the experience here is that a bunch of people come with a bunch of questions, a bunch of them get their questions answered, and there's only some subset of those that want to keep coming back. So the people that have the energy to keep coming back are the ones we want on the committee, and then the rest of the community can know that those are point people to bring issues to. You know, sometimes there are people that don't have time to come to those kind of meetings, others do. So we're happy for the neighbors to bring them up themselves.
What's the meeting schedule? How often does that committee meet? And
With the ombudsman installed, we basically meet on demand. So we started meeting quarterly up at Springdale, and we haven't met. I don't know what the frequency is that you've kept up, but the committee can call a meeting through the ombudsman. And just as far as the track record goes, when we held this meeting the first time for Springdale, I think there was over 100 people that talked. Since we got the ombudsman in place and the neighborhood committee, the ombudsman has heard from one neighbor once since that got put in place. So it's a good process to work through these issues, explain to people what can be done, prove that we're gonna do what can be done, and move forward.
thank you.
It's a bit painful to me to know that 2 years ago we approved that, and we're hearing a lot of the same stuff today. And I don't understand why you wouldn't have precluded this from being the situation in another mine that wasn't involved in this in Springdale. I don't get it. And you know, it was on the credibility of Mrs. Hunt that finally was passed.
Mm-hmm.
And quite frankly, you're tarnishing Mrs. Hunt's word, and that troubles me. By what I hear from your neighbors out here, we didn't want to hear that. I see no reason for us to want to hear that.
I agree completely. We would have preferred to hear this from these neighbors at our neighborhood meeting.
What would that do? For what? You wouldn't do anything.
And it was 1 week's notice to have that meeting.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move that that's not the time. I'm sorry.
Yeah. You have anything else to add, sir?
No, do you guys, it's hard for me to understand what you guys have found credible or not. So to the issue of the permit, do you want me to speak to that about the grandfathering this site? Is that an issue for you guys? No? Okay. No, I've generally got some notes I took, but I think I've spoken to most of it. What we'd like to do is get a vote on this, set the ombudsman up, set the neighborhood committee up. This obviously, after you guys make a recommendation, has to go to the quorum court. We'd love to work through these issues with people. Last time at Springdale, we ended up tabling it and working through the issues by having, I don't even remember how many of these meetings. Our preference would not be to do it that way, but this is at your discretion.
Okay. Do what? No, we're gonna leave it with the board right now. Board, what's your thoughts here? We're gonna. Turn your mic on.
I move we table this CUP and get better information, get more clarity from our planning board, and find out what their attitudes and ideas are. And I'd like to see some affirmation of what we enacted a couple of years ago whenever this came before us before, because it's the same song, second verse, and it bothers me that that's the case. It didn't have to happen. This would have been easy for us. But I move that we table it.
I second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any further comment? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Why don't we have a roll call vote, sir?
Sure. Philip Humbert,
Aye.
Neil Helm, Jay Piercy,
No.
Lisa Miller,
No.
Lauren Shackelford,
No.
Kiera Lors.
Aye.
So we have a tie. Yeah.
3-3, motion fails. Okay, we'll discuss it some
All right,
more.
so obviously, Mr. Chair, I voted against tabling because, I mean, I think, you know, either way, this is gonna get appealed to quorum court. I think that we owe the applicant and the residents due process. I mean, this is going to be, whether it's voted up, voted down, I assume it's gonna be appealed to the quorum court. And I don't know, you know, I respect the conversation about tabling it to get more information, to get more feedback. I don't know what changes between now and the next meeting that's gonna affect how this thing gets due process. So that's my personal reason for not voting to table. I think we owe due process to all the concerned citizens and the applicant to make a recommendation to quorum court, keep this process moving. I personally think that the neighborhood committee, some of the things that we saw work in Springdale can make this situation better. I think there's some merit to, you know, some compromise to where you expand north instead of south, you limit no more ingress, egress. There's things that could be better than what's potentially already approved with the Big Red Dirt Farm. But I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done by the applicant through this neighborhood committee and some of the processes we saw work in Springdale to do that. So I think those are part of this proposed requirement. I think that's a step in the direction. I mean, we're not voting today to stop the mining process.
We didn't have those ideas when we first started that, and we.
So that's why I voted to not table. I think we owe due process.
Okay.
I think there's an opportunity to make this better for the citizens than what it is now with the work of the applicant, and I think it's gonna end up in quorum court anyhow.
So you're gonna make a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion for recommendation of approval to the quorum court with all of the required stipulations and conditions as approved, or as proposed by city staff, by county staff, I'm sorry.
Are we adding any conditions or like striking out any conditions?
I'm gonna propose it as is, the conditions as staff has recommended, and let the quorum court decide if there needs to be additions or revisions to that.
I'm going to need to abstain on any voting on this. I own stock in Hunt.
Wait a second.
I'll second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Roll call vote?
Philip Humbert,
Yes.
Neil Helm, Jay Piercy,
Yes.
Lauren Shackelford,
Yes.
Kiera Lors.
No.
So that's 1, 2, 3, once again, Sam? 3-2. Well, it has to be, it's a CUP, it has to be like 4. Yeah, so We have 7 members, so it has to be like the majority of the body, so it has to be 4 against. So,
So who's the expert on parliamentary procedure? So that motion failed.
failed, yeah.
So does it move on to court or fail the motion?
A project has to have at least 7 votes, a majority of the full body, in order for it to be approved for, or recommended for approval to the CUP. And so the fact that we don't have 7 votes in favor of that, just, it fails. It will not move on as a recommended CUP. I think the applicant can reapply and redo things, but in order for it to move on, it has to have 4 votes. It'd be the same thing if the quorum court didn't pass an ordinance because it didn't have the, adequate number of votes, then the ordinance just dies.
Yeah, so basically. So this project would like be called like as dead, and like the applicant need to reapply.
So we're done here? Thank you. Appreciate your time, guys.
We have one item there. Yeah, so you, yeah. So we need to move to other business, so, oh, sure. There is one up front, ma'am.
Hey, if you're leaving, if you would please leave and go outside and talk so that the board can finish their business for the evening.
Finish this, other business?
Absolutely, yeah. It's, so our next meeting is gonna be November 3rd, and the following one is gonna be December 8th. And that would be the last meeting that Mr. Joel Kelsey, as the chairman, is gonna be with us. Mr. Lauren, he's being voted to become the new chairman, and Mr. Phillip is his assistant. So I guess, like, we need to, recruit more people, like, for the planning board. Excuse me.
The judge will appoint a new planning board member.
Thank you. Thanks, Brian.
Make a motion that we adjourn. All in favor, stand up.
Second.